Imagine a life with less stuff, less clutter, less stress and debt and discontent. A life with fewer distractions. Now imagine a life with more. More time, more meaningful relationships, more growth and contribution and contentment. Ever feel like you're drowning in stuff? Like maybe chasing after more isn't actually the key to happiness.
Yeah, it's a real tug of war, isn't it? Wanting less, but somehow ending up with more. A lot of us are wrestling with that these days.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. The world of minimalism. We've got a whole pile of sources to unpack. The Minimalism documentary, some great insights from YouTubers like Matt D'Avella and Future Proof, even a bit of neuroscience on how our brains react to clutter.
Oh, cool. The brain stuff always fascinates me.
Right. By the end of this deep dive, we'll uncover why minimalism exploded in popularity, where it might have veered off course, and most importantly, how you can apply those core principles to your own life, even if you're not ready to ditch your apartment for a tiny house.
I think a lot of people get hung up on that image, the whole stark, empty space thing. It's way more nuanced than that.
Totally agree. So let's rewind a bit. Early 2010s. What made minimalism so appealing back then?
Well, think about the context. The 2008 recession was still pretty fresh in everyone's minds. Lots of people were struggling with debt, feeling burnt out from that constant pressure to buy. Minimalism came along like a breath of fresh air.
Like a total rebellion against the keep up with the Joneses mentality.
Exactly. It was this countercultural wave.
And then you had the minimalists, Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus, sharing their story, going from corporate burnout to finding freedom by getting rid of most of their stuff.
And people really connected with their message. It challenged the whole American dream script. You know, bigger house, fancier car, all that. Minimalism offered a different path. One that focused on being intentional, on choosing experiences over things, on building deeper relationships.
It was like permission to question those ingrained ideas about success and happiness. Okay, but here's the million-dollar question. If minimalism offered such a compelling alternative, why didn't it stick? Why are we even talking about whether it failed?
That's the real meat of this deep dive. And I think one key piece is this inherent paradox in minimalism itself. It's all about buying a well-assessed in a world that's obsessed with buying more. It's like trying to swim upstream against this powerful current.
That makes total sense. And then social media came along and added a whole other layer to the mix, didn't it?
Oh, for sure. Platforms like YouTube and Instagram, they help spread the message. Definitely, but they also contributed to a kind of superficial interpretation of minimalism.
Like suddenly it became all about these perfectly curated, Instagram-worthy minimalist spaces.
Right. The focus shifted to aesthetics rather than a genuine change in values. In one of Matt D'Avella's videos, Kyle Chaka calls this superficial minimalism. It's all about appearances, not a real lifestyle shift.
Like minimalism became more of a trend than a movement.
Yeah, kind of. But true minimalism goes much deeper than that. It's about really examining your relationship with stuff, understanding what truly serves you.
Right, it's about getting to the heart of why we buy things, why we hold on to things. So we've got this tension within the movement itself, the influence of social media. What else contributed to this idea of minimalism failing?
Well, there's the accessibility piece. Future Proof made a good point about this in one of their videos. Minimalism, as it's often presented, can feel very exclusive, like it caters to a certain demographic.
You mean it's easier to embrace if you've got a certain level of financial security?
Yeah, if you have the means to replace items if you need to, if you can afford to experiment with extreme decluttering or live in a tiny house. Not everyone has that luxury.
So privilege plays a role. That's a really important point. Okay, so we've got this built-in tension, the social media effect, questions of accessibility, and then, as if that wasn't enough, throw a global pandemic into the mix.
Oh yeah, talk about a curveball. Suddenly our homes became our whole world. Offices, schools, gyms, everything.
And I feel like that really sparked a shift back towards maximalism, didn't it?
Absolutely. People craved comfort, that feeling of being surrounded by things that felt personal and vibrant. Maximalism was suddenly back in style. Think lots of color, cozy textures, personal collections, a total contrast to that stark minimalist aesthetic we were talking about earlier.
So we've got tension within the movement, the social media lens, and a pandemic that completely reshaped our relationship with our homes. No wonder minimalism's momentum seemed to fizzle out.
It's a complex web of factors, for sure. But does that mean minimalism totally flopped? Not necessarily. Back again for more of our minimalism deep dive. We've been talking about the rise of this movement and then those cracks that started to show, making people wonder if it really had staying power.
It's been a fascinating journey so far, from the appeal of simplifying life to like the contradictions within minimalism itself, and then those big external forces like, social media and the pandemic totally changing the conversation.
And as we get into this next part, I think it's important to say that maybe minimalism failing, if you even want to call it that, maybe it's actually a chance for us to learn something.
Okay, I like that, reframing it. So let's dig into those lessons. Where do we even start?
Well, we were just talking about the pandemic's impact, how it kind of forced us to reevaluate our relationship with our homes. They became our everything. Offices, schools, entertainment centers, all rolled into one.
Yeah, our homes had to do it all.
Right. And when that happened, it naturally made people crave comfort, personalization, even a bit of vibrancy. And that's when we saw that resurgence of maximalism.
So our homes became these little reflections of our lives, showing how much we need both functionality and emotional connection.
Exactly. And this leads us to a really crucial lesson. Minimalism isn't one size fits all. It's about finding that sweet spot that works for you, your lifestyle, your needs.
It reminds me of something Matt D'Avella talked about in one of his videos. He did this Project 333 thing where he wore only 33 items for 3 months.
Oh yeah, it was a wild experiment.
But, as D'Avella himself admits, it's not for everyone. And it highlights how important it is to find your version of minimalism. What works for one person might be totally off for another.
Absolutely, and that's a key takeaway here. Minimalism shouldn't feel like deprivation or following some rigid rule book. It's about intentionality, making conscious choices about what you bring into your life, your home, even your digital space.
Being mindful about it all.
Right, and that intentionality can actually be applied to so many areas of life. It's not just about physical stuff. Think about your digital consumption. All those emails, notifications, the constant stream of information.
Oh man, don't get me started. It's like we're glued to our devices, just scrolling and clicking nonstop.
And all that input can be seriously draining. So minimalism encourages us to be more mindful of our digital habits too. Unsubscribe from those newsletters you never open, turn off notifications, set limits on social media.
It's like decluttering our digital lives, just like we declutter our physical spaces.
Exactly. Create a digital experience that's more peaceful, more intentional.
This makes me think about another practical takeaway from minimalism: simplifying our time and energy. It's so easy to get caught up in the busyness of life, always rushing, always multitasking.
It's true.
And minimalism gives us a framework for prioritizing our time and energy, focusing on what truly matters to us.
Absolutely. Learning to say no to things that drain us, creating space for things that bring joy and fulfillment.
Speaking of saying no, I recently came across this idea of a not-to-do list, which I've actually found really helpful.
A not-to-do list. That's interesting. What's that all about?
It's basically a list of things you're consciously choosing not to do. Like not checking emails first thing in the morning, not scrolling through social media before bed, not watching TV during dinner. Breaking those habits that just eat up time and energy without adding any real value.
That's brilliant. By choosing what not to do, we create space for things that actually matter. And it connects back to that core idea of minimalism, shifting our focus from stuff to experiences, relationships, personal growth.
And that shift can be so freeing, so liberating. It's like that quote from the minimalists: love people, use things, because the opposite never works.
Such a simple yet profound reminder, right? Real fulfillment comes from connection, from purpose, from meaning, not from accumulating more and more stuff.
So maybe when we say minimalism failed, we're getting it wrong. Maybe it's not about the movement itself, but more about how we've interpreted it. Letting go of those rigid definitions and embracing those core values of intentionality, simplicity, finding what truly serves us.
That's a great way to put it. Minimalism, at its core, it's a tool to create a more fulfilling life. It's about aligning our actions with our values, making space for what truly matters.
Okay, so as we wrap up this part, I'm curious, what do you think? Is minimalism still relevant today, even with all this talk of it failing?
I think it's totally relevant. Maybe not in that original strict sense, but definitely in its spirit. Those core principles, intentionality, conscious consumption, focusing on what matters, those are timeless. And they're so valuable in our world that's just getting more and more complex.
But even if we don't all become card-carrying minimalists, we can still benefit from those principles.
Exactly. And that's what we'll explore in the last part of our deep dive. We'll talk about some practical tips and strategies for bringing those principles into your daily life. No matter your personal style or your living situation, there's something here for everyone.
Welcome back to our Minimalism Deep Dive. We've really dug into the rise of this whole movement, explored where it might have stumbled, and uncovered some powerful lessons about living more intentionally and mindfully.
And really challenge this idea of minimalism failing, right? It's more like it's evolving, shifting its shape.
Totally. So for this final part, let's get practical. What are some things our listeners can actually do, even if they're not, ready to embrace the whole minimalist aesthetic? Where do we even begin?
Well, I think it starts with a mindset shift. Instead of focusing on what you can get rid of, think about what you want to keep. Look around your home, your schedule, even the information you're taking in every day. Ask yourself, does this add value to my life? Does it bring me joy? Does it support my well-being?
So it's instead of decluttering being the main goal, it's about curating a life that's filled with things that actually matter to you.
Exactly. It's about being intentional with everything. And this can look so different for different people. Maybe it means choosing experiences over things, or paring down your wardrobe to those key pieces you absolutely love, or saying no to commitments that drain you.
And it doesn't have to be this huge, overwhelming purge. You can start small. Pick one area, maybe your kitchen junk drawer, and try that one in, one out rule.
Yeah.
Every time you bring in something new, donate or toss something else.
I love that. Little steps, big impact. And speaking of letting go of things, I know that can be tough for people, especially when it comes to sentimental items. If you're struggling with that, try taking photos before you part with things. It's a way to keep the memory without the physical clutter.
Oh, that's a good tip. It honors the sentimental value while still freeing up space. But minimalism isn't just about our stuff, right? We were talking earlier about digital clutters, all that information overload we face every day.
It's a real thing. So think of your digital life as an extension of your home. Clean it up. Unsubscribe from all those emails you never read. Turn off those pesky notifications. Be more mindful of your social media time. Maybe even delete some apps you're not using.
It's about taking back your attention, being more present in the real world.
Exactly. And that leads us to another big takeaway. Simplifying your time and energy. It's so easy to overcommit, to feel like you're always rushing, always multitasking.
I'm definitely raising my hand for that one. It's almost like we're programmed to be busy all the time.
Right. Minimalism asks us to question that, to really look at how we're spending our time and energy. Maybe it means saying no more often. Maybe it's about delegating. Maybe it's just scheduling in some downtime for yourself. Remember that not to-do list we talked about.
Yep. It's a great reminder that we have choices.
We have the power to choose. And when we simplify our schedules, our commitments, we make space for the things that matter most. Spending time with people we love, pursuing hobbies, just enjoying some peace and quiet.
Yeah. Okay, so zooming out to the big picture here, what's the lasting message of minimalism? What can we take away from this whole movement, even if we don't, go all in on it?
I think the real legacy of minimalism is that invitation to live more intentionally, to question our assumptions about what we need, about what truly makes us happy, about how we want to spend our time.
It's about remembering that we have choices. We don't have to get swept up in consumerism or trends or that constant pressure to be busy.
It's about designing a life that aligns with our values, a life that's full of the things that matter, a life that's free from the excess that weighs us down.
I love that. Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you with that thought. As the minimalist put it, love people, use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of minimalism.
We hope this sparked some new ideas and maybe inspired you to approach life with a little more intention, a little more simplicity, and a lot more joy.